let's get started, and folks will keep coming in. So my name is Danny Rubin. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm the founder of our company, which is called Rubin. We provide online curriculum for business communication skills, email writing, phone calls, conversation skills, teaching students how to conduct themselves professionally to go after college and career opportunities. And we've been doing these Q&A sessions with professionals for the last few months. Today is our next one, and we're tackling the world of engineering. And before we dive in with our special guest, I want to cover some introductory topics, offer some free resources as always, some new stuff this time if you've been to our last couple, some new resources, and to instructors. And then we will bring in our special guest for a Q&A. So let me first share my screen. All right, bring up my chat again. Okay, can you all see my screen? It says 5 free exercises to boost morale. Can anybody say yes in the chat? They see that? Okay. So for the instructors here, we've put together some collections of free resources. This one is, we actually created it several months ago for a different webinar, but it has just as much relevance now. Exercises to help students boost morale. We're really going through the thick of it with the pandemic right now. And so we have 5 exercises where one helps students to uncover their why or true purpose, how to reach out to a mentor, learn to share a story of your work ethic, a technique for public speaking, and even a cool social media activity, creating a personal hashtag. We put together this whole bucket in a Google folder of exercises that are free to use, as well as for those who missed it, we always like to offer, because a big part of our company is teaching students email etiquette. Raise your hand if your students could improve, teachers, if your students could improve how they write their emails to you, to employers, to colleges. See some hands going up. So take a look at this list. This is another Google folder of exercises where we give you the tools to teach students how to write a professional email. Lots of hands going up. Subject lines, addressing people, email signatures. And when they do the exercises, they can earn a digital badge in email etiquette, an image file for their resume or an e-portfolio. So the exercises to boost morale and the lesson plan for email etiquette. For the instructors, the teachers, the educators here, if you'd like it, we always do it this way. Please type interested in the chat with your email address. For those of you who are new to our community, what we love to do is a quick phone call to help you make the most of our content, explain how our material is structured, and we'll pass along these morale boost exercises and email etiquette exercises. So for those of you, whether you're new to us, you're repeat to us, if you'd like this material, type your email address and the word interested in the chat, and we will pass it along. And we'd love to have a quick chat before Thanksgiving, say hello, get you off into the holiday season. So thank you to those who put their information. And again, don't just put the word interested, please put your email address as well so we can make sure we're matching it with the right person. And we'll bring this up again towards the end of our session, but I wanted to offer it right at the beginning so you know we always like to give out free material to teachers. Take it right into the classroom. Okay, so thank you to those who are putting your name in the list, and we'll get that material out as soon as possible, and you can keep typing, it's no problem. But let's move on. As you know, we always have a next session, and we're hopping around different career paths. And the next time, we're covering the world of hospitality and tourism. Anybody here have students who want to work in those fields? Any hands up of students who may want to work in hospitality and hotels and travel? Okay. So on Thursday, December 10th at 12:30, we're going to talk to Jay Lefkowitz. He's the Director of Group Strategy for the Gaylord National Resort. Those of you who live in the DC area, you know National Harbor. It's a huge resort and conference center outside of Washington, DC. It's a Marriott hotel. And he has a huge job at that hotel and oversees a lot of people in a big, big operation. He's going to talk about what hotels have been going through during COVID and how he's reacting and how students can prepare themselves for jobs in this field too, despite what's going on with the pandemic. So mark your calendars. We'll send out the invite shortly, December 10th, 3 weeks from now. We're going to talk to Jay Leftwich about hotels, hospitality, and tourism. As a reminder, everybody who is here live today, or teachers, if you share this with students on a replay later, we're going to give everybody a certificate for being here today, teachers and students, to show proof that you were here. That's coming your way tomorrow morning. And also for anybody who's on Twitter, if you're a Twitter person, we'd love to have you follow us on Twitter at Rubin Education. Please give us a follow and stay in touch with us on Twitter. Okay, so now, before we bring in the guest, I want to cover one more thing to give some context for the day. It is. All right, so for those of you, let me get my chat open again. For those of you who are new, those of you who've heard this before, bear with me. For the new folks, it's important to understand that our instruction today, our lessons, our focus is coming out of our company's curriculum, which is called Emerge. And Emerge is a wide-ranging library of communication skill activities covering skills like email etiquette, life skills, phone and video etiquette. Raise your hand if you want your students to be more confident on the phone, calling businesses, talking to people through phone interviews, Zoom interviews. We teach skills like that. Networking, emails, resumes, cover letters, internship and job outreach, email practice, LinkedIn profiles. Who wants to help their students understand LinkedIn? Understand what a LinkedIn profile is and how to write one of yourself. Job interview prep. Anybody here do marketing, entrepreneurship, business? See some hands flying up still. We teach writing skills for sales, writing a website for your student business, public relations communication skills, like writing a media advisory to bring the newspaper to your school for a story, writing skills for fundraising, and also writing and speaking for leadership skills, writing as a manager to your team, writing to your clients like Mr. Pullen was talking about, responding to a citizen complaint. How do you do that? Project management correspondence within your own team, public speaking exercises, learning to write reports and updates to your boss, to your team about your work, and exercises for student leaders. I always like to ask, are there any advisors here for student organizations like Skills USA or Business Professionals of America or FBLA or Student Council? Go to the chat and tell me, what group do you advise? I'd love to see what you're doing within your school. Okay, so everything is sort of stemming off of Emerge. Now let me turn off my share, and I'd like to bring Mr. Pullen back. Hopefully he's still with us. He didn't run off. There he is. All right, so that's the background for today. And thank you for sharing. We have a BPA, we have FBLA and DECA. Wonderful. So that's the background for today. Is our next webinar. You're getting a certificate, and our company and the focus of our instruction is coming out of our own curriculum to teach effective communication. What I'd like to do is introduce Mr. Phil Pullen, who is generous enough to give us his time today. And what I'd like for him to do is briefly introduce himself, explain the nature of his job, and then he has some really interesting slides to share about some current projects. So let me pass it over to Mr. Pullen for a quick hello.
Thanks, Danny. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Phil Pullen. I work for the city of Virginia Beach. I am actually the city engineer, and I've been with the city for 25 years. Prior to that, I was with a consulting firm, environmental consulting firm, for about 8 years. So I have about a 33-year engineering career. I graduated from Virginia Tech in Blacksburg in 1986. Hopefully most of you have heard about that. Maybe some haven't that have been around, that are outside the country, but it is a great engineering school.
One of the best.
So in my career, in my job right now as city engineer, I'm essentially an engineering manager. I don't really do a whole lot of hands-on calculations and design like I did at the early part of my career. I am managing several divisions to do their work and get their work done. I have about 135 folks that report to me. And the divisions that I manage are stormwater, transportation, and coastal. Those are the main three. And then I have some support, construction, surveying, and engineering support. So yeah, we deliver projects. We take care of the citizens and answering their issues and complaints that they have. and we solve problems. That's what we do in the city engineer's office.
Thank you very much. And one thing I'd like to point out, and I did this in our last session, who just heard him say, how many people does he oversee? Who can tell me the number? It was right in the chat already. How many people does Mr. Pullen oversee? 135. Exactly. I want you to listen closely to numbers. Numbers are important, and numbers, we remember numbers, and they help us understand the size and importance of different tasks and projects. So think about numbers for your own work, whether it's engineering or anything else. Think about the numbers that you have. 135 is a number that Mr. Pullen has, and that's an impressive number. Okay, so thank you for sharing in the chat. Let's listen out for numbers today, okay? And there we go, right in our worksheet, question number 2, and I'll share it in the chat, and we'll get to the PowerPoint slide. Let me just pull this question up in the chat, okay? We just heard one. You can remember other facts too. But here's a question. We just learned an interesting fact. We're going to learn a lot more, but that's one. So let's listen out for more numbers. And tell me in the chat when you hear a good one, okay? All right, so Mr. Pullen, thank you for sharing your background, a lot of experience. Now you've risen to management. You're overseeing a lot of projects. So go ahead and share your slide deck, and let's talk through some projects that you and your team are working on right now.
Will do here. Let's see. Let me.
And by the way, while we're doing that, let me just reiterate that please continue to put your own questions in the Q&A while he's talking, and we're going to get to the questions after his slideshow presentation, his brief slides. So continue to ask your own questions in the Q&A section, and we will get to them shortly.
So I think Danny had mentioned to you guys, or on the flyer there, that one of the projects that we just completed is a great project. Is 19th Street infrastructure improvements in the city of Virginia Beach. This is a corridor that goes from our essentially down to our oceanfront to our convention center, and there's a lot of businesses on there, and it's a it's a corridor that is very important to the city, and it was looking pretty bad. So this project installed sidewalks, it undergrounded overhead utilities, created a 3-lane section with on-street parking. I'll show you a picture here in a minute of some of the things, and a lot of other infrastructure improvements. So what you're looking at here is on the right, you see pipes in the ground, and what that is we undergrounded the overhead utilities. I'm sure wherever you guys live in your neighborhoods or in your areas, you see a lot of overhead power lines. And while they serve a great purpose, they're largely unsightly. So in Virginia Beach, especially in our urban areas, what we like to do is when we go in and do a project, we like to underground those. So basically we rip down the poles, wires, put them in a duct bank like this. That's a concrete duct bank that's getting ready to be poured. And then you don't see it. You continue with the same power, but you just don't see it. And it's not just power, it's telecommunications as well. The picture on the left there is LED street lights. So I'm sure like in many of your communities, you had the high pressure sodium, the yellowish type lights. Well, we in the Virginia Beach are going with these new modern LED. It's more of a white light, and it's very cost effective. So that's just a couple pictures there that shows.
Raise your hands, students, real quick. Raise your hands if you think that's pretty cool, putting all the power lines underground. That's pretty cool, right? Wow, that's a neat engineering project. A lot of hands going up. That's great. Go ahead.
This is another picture on that same, project, 19th Street. Again, it was largely a lot of streetscapes you see with a sign. You can see over here in the bottom right where we're putting brick pavers, again, mainly for aesthetic treatments. But again, these are all engineered structures. Even when you put in a brick pavers, it's on a concrete slab that has to be designed. The picture there in the middle, if my pointer works, you may not be able to see it, but the picture in the middle there is with some concrete pipe and vaults. This is for stormwater. Again, stormwater is big in the city of Virginia Beach, so whenever we do a project, we will incorporate stormwater improvements. So we're putting in larger pipes and structures to take care of the stormwater.
Excellent.
So that was a 19th Street. The 19th Street project. Let's show you a picture of our coastal projects that we have. So again, City of Virginia Beach, we are on the Atlantic Ocean and Chesapeake Bay. So coastal engineering is a big thing that falls under me. And a lot of people don't understand or realize that beaches are engineered systems. They're not just a place for you to put your lawn chair or your beach chair and your umbrella. They actually serve a purpose. What purpose do they serve? They protect the structures, houses, and hotels that are behind it. So beaches are engineered. You can see a picture down here. This basically was a project we did back in 1996 where we widened the beach. You can see from, in that one picture, from about 100 feet wide to about 300 feet wide. And we put in a concrete seawall that you can see in one of the pictures there. And along with that was a boardwalk. Again, this was all to protect the hotels behind it from Mother Nature. How do we get the sand up on the beach? You can see that picture in the bottom right. That is a big ship that we dredged the bottom of the ocean, not that far out, maybe only a few hundred yards. And then we pump the sand onto the beach and spread it around to create this wider beach and a more robust engineered system that protects what's behind it.
Let me ask the students real quickly. How many people think that's pretty cool? They go into the ocean, they take the sand from the bottom of the ocean and bring it back to the beach. How cool is that? Did you know that that's how it happens, how the beaches get wider? That is pretty cool. Go ahead, Mr. Pullen.
Yeah, and with this particular project, like I say, we built it was 4 miles of seawall and 3 miles of boardwalk.
Wow.
We put in a new drainage system under the boardwalk. A lot of people don't realize that, even that live in Virginia Beach, that there's a 10-foot diameter pipe. You can see that guy standing next to that pipe. It's 10-foot diameter pipe under the boardwalk. Again, this is to get stormwater that's coming in off of the resort area, Atlantic Avenue, Pacific Avenue, off of the streets, because again, we flood really bad. So that was a good opportunity to use that as a stormwater system.
Wow. Wow.
And so that's the coastal engineering, and I'm just hitting around a couple projects. Speaking of flooding, this is what we receive a lot of in Virginia Beach.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? This is your house, everybody. Can you imagine? This is what's coming up your front steps. Oh my gosh. Go ahead, Mr. Pullen.
This is a major storm that hit Hurricane Matthew back in just about 4 or 5 years ago, about 2015. And so we have old stormwater systems in the city of Virginia Beach, so we can't handle major hurricanes and major storm events like this when we get flooding in some areas. Now, what this did was this prompted our city council to fund about a $300 million project that we will work on for the next several years to put in new pipes, larger pipes, pump stations to prevent this from happening on many many storms. I didn't mean to go to this slide, but here's a slide of an exhibit of a rendering of what a pump station would look like, where we will just build pumps and build a building that will pump the water back out and put gates to block it and pump it back out. So the previous picture you saw here, we don't get this type of flooding.
Wow.
So that is what another big thing we do is stormwater management in the city of Virginia Beach. Lastly, I'll just show you sea level rise is a big thing in the city, and we have many ways that we are working to combat it, to deal with it, because it's coming. We project 1.5 feet of sea level rise in 30 years and 3 foot in 50 years. This is a major bridge. This is a major bridge, Lessner Bridge, over the Chesapeake Bay and Lynnhaven Inlet in Virginia Beach. And when high waters come from sea level rise and hurricanes, it comes from the Chesapeake Bay through the inlet and floods neighborhoods and properties back in the back off of Lynnhaven Inlet. So one of the things we would propose is to put in some horizontal gates and these immovable water gates. Basically, we can shut down Mother Nature to a certain degree so that when the waters come from the Chesapeake Bay, we can keep them from coming in the inlet. This is just one example of some engineered structures that we are pursuing to combat sea level rise in the city of Virginia Beach.
Wow. Really, that's a really neat, who thinks that's a pretty cool project, what they're doing to that bridge to manage the water flow? So homes don't, and the homes could be several hundred yards away, but the water just pushes forward and impacts people far away from this one spot, far, far away. This is really great stuff. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing
yeah.
those
Yes, sir.
slides. I know we went quickly, hit on a lot of things, but it really helps us to understand the work that he's doing. It's very real life. Who here would like to work on projects like that one day? Raise your hand if you'd like to do this type of engineering work. See some hands going up. That's great. Okay, so let's go to some of our questions, and we'll kind of let the conversation roll from there. We did have that one from Mr. Castleton. He said, some reports that some of the sea level shifts are due to shifting, rising, and falling of tectonic plates. Do you know do you have any sort of understanding of the origins of sea level rise, sort of where it's coming from? What would be the root of it? And also just how Virginia Beach is planning for the next 100 years around sea level rise.
So the science of sea level rise is very complicated. In general, in Virginia Beach and in most places, sea level rise is due to ground subsidence, which basically means the ground is sinking and the tides are rising. The higher water due to the moon and the glaciers melting, and again, the ground sinking. You add those two things together and you get a total of sea level rise. And our region has adopted 1.5 feet. We project 1.5 feet of total sea level rise in 30 years and 3 foot in 50 years. This is based on a lot of science, a lot of different studies. Some places have it larger than that, some have smaller, but that's what we have landed on, and it's pretty regionally accepted. There are many adaptation strategies that you don't just build structures to combat sea level rise. There are policy decisions you make, meaning you don't allow people to build in vulnerable places, and you change some of your land use. That's one strategy. Another strategy is design. We make engineers that are out there designing homes, buildings, structures and stuff. We give them higher standards, stricter criteria to follow when they design. We make them adapt for that 1.5 feet and account for that 3 foot when they do their designs. And then the third thing is the protection, where we actually build this hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure, like I showed you on that last slide, to actually, as an engineered protection against the rising waters. So it's a three-legged stool, three-pronged approach, and that's what the city of Virginia Beach is pursuing.
Thank you very much. We have a question. Please try to put all your questions in the Q&A. We did have one in the chat from Ms. Owens at Norview. I thought it was a good question to ask, so I'll bring it to you now. How much sand is lost each year from storms and hurricanes? Like, it happens so gradually, we probably can't see with our own eyes how much smaller the beach is becoming, but how often does the sand sort of fall back into the ocean? What does that process look like over time?
I love answering questions from people from my alma mater, Norview High School, is where I graduated in 1982.
I'm sorry, she's at Maury. I apologize.
Oh, well, she's my
Crosstown.
rival high school. But anyway, Commodores. I like the Commodores. I can't put a number on it, but it does gradually. So we have 3 major beach systems in Virginia Beach: the Chesapeake Bay up in the north. We have the Big Beach, the resort that I showed you the picture of, and then further south, the Sandbridge beaches. They all erode and lose sand at a different rate. So it's hard to put, I don't have a number to put on it. And it also depends on the number of storms that come. We generally replenish our beaches about every 5 years. There's another number, every 5 years. Now that fluctuates on a lot of things, money being one of them, because it costs a lot to replenish beaches. And as you can imagine, it's kind of a political issue, because you're putting a lot of money to pump sand back on the beach that we know is going to get washed back into the ocean again. But we do that every 5 years. The federal government helps us with that. And, we do it not just for people to enjoy going out there and sunbathing, but again, they're engineered beaches to help protect the property that is behind them.
Great. Thank you for that. Question from Paula, Cedar Hill, Texas. If you had to choose one, what do you believe helped you perform your job the best? The education you received or the experience you gathered? I guess you're saying education in school or out there in the world? What was better?
There is no doubt about this. This is a lock solid answer. It's the experience I received. Although my graduate and my education from Tech, my alma mater, is great. But no, you guys will realize that once you get out and start making connections and learning more and more about how to talk to people and learning how to deal with people, and then you just learn from people that have been doing this before you for years and years, that experience is invaluable. That is where I would say I have learned most of my, my skill set to do what I do.
That's great. And I want to direct everybody to the question I just posted in the chat. It's number 4 in our worksheet. If you wrote a thank you note to Mr. Pullen, what piece of advice would you include that he shared? That was a pretty good piece of advice. There's no substitute for experience in all jobs, and especially in a job like engineering when you're working with a lot of machinery and it can be very dangerous even. You have to be very precise with every decision that you make. And so I think that was a great answer. I want to go to, where was that question? Also from Mr. Castleton, another good question. Would you explain the significance of the title PE in engineering? What does that title mean? Why is it an important title in engineering?
So PE, it means professional engineer. That is a license. That is a license just like a doctor gets to perform surgery. It's just like a license an electrician has to get before he can go do electrical work. A PE license is a license that I get issued by the state that allows me to make certain decisions and do certain things in engineering. That doesn't mean you have to be a license to do engineering, but if you want to do certain things like seal plans, stamp plans, you have to you have to be a professional engineer. And how you get that is you have a degree. You take a test after about right after you get your degree. It's called a FE or a engineering training. You have to pass that, and then after you get about 4 or 5 years experience, you're eligible to take the second test. And if you pass that, you become a licensed PE, and then you stay with that for your career. Now, every state is a little different. I just described how Virginia works. Some states are a little different, but that's generally how state license you to be a professional engineer.
Thank you very much. We have a question. It says anonymous, but I'd love the person who asked it to put their name in the chat. It says, what was the best part of your job that you like doing? I'll expand that to say, what's been your favorite project over all the years? And if whoever wrote that question, say in the chat your name, we'd like to give you the credit. But what was your favorite project?
So I think people become engineers, and I did, because I like to see things being built. I like to know that I worked on something and then I can ride around my community and see that road, see that bridge, see that structure, building or whatever, and know that I had something to do with it. So that's what I like, and that's what I enjoy most. As the bridge I just showed you, Danny knows it well because he's local here, the Lesnar Bridge. That is a career type of project, and I had a lot to do with that project. So I would have to say that was one of my favorite projects. $120 million bridge project that took about 8 years from inception to completion. And it's a pretty unique bridge. If you ever come to Virginia Beach, check out the Lesnar Bridge.
Okay.
That was one of my favorites.
Did we just hear some numbers again? Who can tell me the numbers you just heard? Put them in the chat. What'd you just hear? I heard 2 numbers, a big one. There you go. $120 million. Who thinks that's a lot of money? I do. 8 years. These are big, big projects, long-term stuff. That's great. Great job listening. Remember that as you're thinking about interesting facts that you learned, we're listening out for the numbers, right? That's what helps us remember. Okay. Now, a good question here from maybe a student of Mr. Adam Corral, if I'm saying his last name right. Any advice for high school students who want to go into engineering? If you want to prepare yourself for this career, what can you be doing now in school, high school or college, to prepare yourself for the job? What would you say to that?
Obviously, engineering, you have to be pretty good at math and science because you have to get into a qualified engineering program at an engineering school to accredited is what I meant. So you have to be able to get in, and then when you're in college, you're going to take some pretty extensive science and math classes. But I always qualify that with saying you don't have to be the engineer geek that just sits behind a desk and crunches number all the time. Once you get your degree, there are many paths that you can go on, and you can be an environmental engineer, you can be a structural engineer, you can be a coastal engineer. You are going to have a decent technical background, but once you learn how to talk to people and learn how to listen to people and network, and your career will take off, and you can be a project manager where you just basically are assembling and putting all the groups of folks, the technical folks together that are building something, and you're just kind of like the coordinator. So again, you don't have to be overly technical, but you do have to have the math and science in high school, good foundation to get to college and pass.
Thank you. I've seen this question a few times in the chat. I'll ask you, if you have a PE license, does that valid in just your state, or can you work in other states with the same license?
So no, you have to get reciprocity from me. If I'm doing a project in North Carolina, I only have a Virginia PE. So I would have to go to North Carolina and see what it takes to get a PE license in North Carolina. Some states it's just filling out a piece of paper, paying the fee, and it automatically transfers. Other states, they make you take a test or some other different requirements. It's different state to state. I would have to say most of them are just reciprocity, where you just basically pay the license fee and fill out the paperwork.
Okay, thank you. A question here from Tiana Parks. I like this question. Was there ever a time you felt like giving up because it was too much? Did you ever get so stressed or overworked that you thought about doing something else or stepping away? And did it ever, what's kept you going all these years, even when it got stressful?
Well, in school, I'll tell you, engineering school is not easy. It's not, I was a B minus student, so I wasn't an A+ student, so it came pretty hard. So a lot of people go in engineering in college and then they end up transferring to something else, which there's nothing wrong with that if that's not your cup of tea. So there was a couple times where I thought about doing that, going to something that was less strenuous. Then I got through it, and when I got my job, my first job, as with any job, they are going to, any company or any public facility is going to put you, you're going to start at the lowest level, and you're going to do grunt work. That's just the way it is. Now it's, and so after, a few weekends spent out in the outdoors, doing some monitoring, reading some monitoring wells out in the middle of the woods, I thought, is this really what I want to do? But I got through it, and, it ended up being great learning experiences in any company. So you want to stick things out.
Thank you. How many teachers here agree that all the time in life, you got to pay your dues first? You have to start at the bottom. You have to work your way up. Who agrees with that expression and that idea? That's just the reality of any job. And by working at the bottom, you learn all aspects of the business, of whatever business that you're in. So you want to start at the bottom and really build yourself up. Let's take one more question here, and then we're going to wrap up with a few other points around saying thank you and learning how to do a good job with these conversations. One question that came through, I can't recall the name of the person who asked it, but let's just hear one more number. How many people does it take to do a project like the Lesnar Bridge or widening the beach? How many people are involved in a project of that size?
Wow, it's hard to put a pure number on it. I mean, any project is going to be hundreds. That's the number I can say is hundreds, and because you need people, a lot of people designing it, a lot of people going out there, people getting the permits, and then when it comes down to construction, you guys have seen construction sites. You see hundreds of people out there working on, smaller job, not as many, bigger job, big, but just the thing, it's a lot of people, hundreds to do a project, to get a project completed.
There we go. There's another number for everybody. I saw some of you putting it in the chat. Very good listening for those numbers. This is great stuff. Really cool information, great pictures. Let's talk about, let's say that we met with Mr. Pullen and he was gracious enough to meet with you to think about a job in Virginia Beach. Let's just say you lived here and you were looking for a job and he met with you. And after that conversation, what is the most appropriate thing to do after a conversation where somebody helped us? What are we going to do next? What are we going to go back to our computers and write? Who can tell me what comes after that? When we're done with the conversation, that's right, Ms. Owen said, write a thank you note. So let's talk about, and you could write one over email, but it's even more impressive to write a handwritten note. How many students have written a handwritten thank you note before? Raise your hand if you've written a handwritten thank you note before. Okay, great. See some of you, wonderful, lots of hands. Let's talk about the best way to write a thank you message after a conversation. So in the message, whether it's an email or it's a handwritten, we want to say thank you for the time and send that note quickly, that same day or the next day, but really quickly after, so it's fresh on everybody's mind. And let's say that, let me go up here, after a networking meeting. And here we go, it's actually an engineering example. So let's say we want to share something that we learned or that we gained from the conversation. You know, thank you for your insight into the engineering business. Thanks for connecting me with your friend at Acme Corporation. Something specific that took place, something that you learned, something that happened. You could share, thanks for teaching me about the $120 million Lesnar Bridge project, something specific to show Mr. Pullen that you actually listened, that you heard him, that you remembered what he told you. That makes for an excellent thank you message, whether it's for networking, for a job. It will help you to stand out and be considered for the opportunity because you're showing you're a good communicator and you're on the ball every step of the way. I mean, let me ask Mr. Pullen, he can turn his mic on one more time. Let's say that you did meet with a student, asked you, I'm sure you've had many students over the years want to shadow you or, you know, can I come by for the day or can I watch? And if you got a thank you message from that student the same day or the next day, what would it say to you?
Absolutely, Danny. I do that a lot, and I interview a lot of folks, and that impresses me. That shows that they were interested and were paying attention, and were, you know, that they, again, they had a lot of interest in what was going on. So that's very impressive.
Right, and you don't often see it. People, you know, they might come because they have to go and meet with you as part of a school project, but they forget that they're building a relationship the whole time. And you never know where relationships might lead and how that person might be able to help you later on. So we want to make sure that we're showing that we appreciate people at every turn. And just as a last thing, in the worksheet, because we could have glossed over, number 3, it's important, as we've been talking about, and I showed you in the worksheet, that we research people before we meet them. So it shows that we are already interested and we care about what they do, rather than just expecting them to care about us. So remember that answer for question number 3. Researching people shows that we appreciate them, we care what they do, and we're interested in their careers and their lives, just as we hope they are interested in us if they're going to pick us for an opportunity. So let me finish out reminding the instructors here what I mentioned at the beginning. Pulling up my slide deck one more time. Go up here. For those of you who missed it, get my chat up again. 1 second. Okay. For those of you who missed it, the instructors, we put together this packet of exercises that will help boost student morale as we roll into the spring semester, still on lockdown in many states. These activities will make everyone feel like there is still a lot out there, a lot that we can achieve even during the pandemic. Also, a collection of exercises for email etiquette, teaching students how to construct an effective email. If you missed this at the beginning, the way to receive these resources is to type the word interested and your email address in the chat right now. And if you're new to our community, we like to do a brief phone call to help you understand how these materials work, show you the lesson plans and the exercises around it, and then pass it along. So if you're interested and you're an instructor, put your email and your name, and we will pass that along as soon as possible. And also, we have our next webinar, one more probably for the end of 2020. And who's ready for 2020 to end? Show of hands on that. Who's ready for a new year? There's a lot of hands. So last one of 2020, we're going to talk to Jay Lefkowitz. He is an executive at the Gaylord Resort outside of Washington, D.C. It's a Marriott hotel, a 500,000 square foot hotel. 500,000 square feet. That's a big place. Okay, he's going to talk about working in hospitality and tourism. So I hope the teachers will bring your students back on that day and time to be part of that conversation. Okay, and let me turn off the screen one more time. We're just a few minutes shy of 1:15 Eastern, which is when we wrap up our webinar. So let me go back through and see if I missed any other questions that we could cover while we have our guest here, and we'll finish on time. I saw a couple others. Let me go back. A few things that I saw. So many chats today. My goodness, these students. Well, let me go back to this one because there's a lot more in the list. Okay.
Hey, Danny,
Yes.
one point I would like to make,
Please.
if you don't mind, is because it seems to be a lot of questions about whether or not people should get in or how they do it. In high school, there are probably some internship or some type programs like that, but definitely when you get into college, early engineering, your freshman year, try to do an internship, co-op. We used to call them co-ops when I was there, to go out and work for a company over the summer to see if you like it. The benefit you get from that is just tremendous, and that will tell you whether or not you like that field, like that particular aspect of that field. And so, yeah, I would highly recommend that.
Great. Thank you very much. That's a great point. There's, like you said, education is important. No one's going to, say no to that. But getting out there in the field, experiencing the work, there's no better teacher. A quick question somebody had asked about our Emerge curriculum. Does it translate to Spanish? Yes, it does translate to Spanish and a variety of other languages, and has a text-to-speech function that reads words out loud. Let's see, you sort of already covered that one about your early interest. Here's a question. Any exploration of tidal power installations to generate clean power? Actually, maybe separate from that and or Virginia Beach and the state of Virginia is putting in wind turbines out in the ocean. Why don't you actually talk about that for a second? It's an interesting project about wind turbines way out in the water to power homes back on land. Tell us about wind power.
So I'm not directly involved in that, but I do know a lot about it because actually it's the first one in the entire country in federal waters. Virginia Power Dominion is involved, and they actually installed several wind turbines out in the Atlantic Ocean to provide power to City of Virginia Beach businesses, citizens. And if it works, which we all think it will, it's going to grow into a whole thing of wind energy, is where we're going to be headed. It may take a few more years, but it is a great initiative. My particular office doesn't get involved into it too much, other than when they come through the beaches and we have to help them there. But great initiative.
Yeah, I know that these wind turbines, they're 200 feet tall. 200 feet tall, out about 28 miles out in the ocean.
Yeah.
So you cannot see them from land. And they're 200 feet tall. So it's like a skyscraper in the water, which is amazing. And I know that they plan to build 200 of them, I believe, or a huge number of these in the next several years. It's a really neat project. Maybe we'll see more of these projects around the country along the coastlines in the United States if this project proves to be successful. Sorry to put you on the spot on that one, but I've been learning about it too. And it's a fascinating engineering project to think about the size of these. How do you build something that big in the middle of the ocean? It's amazing to think about how they do that. Let's see. Well, we're just about at the time. We're at 1:15 right now Eastern time. So we will wrap up our conversation today. Can we have a hand raised for Mr. Pullen? Show a thank you to Mr. Pullen for his time with us today. I hope that we all learned a lot about engineering in a very short time. I did receive a question about, are you able to share with us that PowerPoint? Could I share that with?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll share the PowerPoint slides, or it'll be a PDF of this presentation if you want to share that with students afterwards. Okay, so look out for that tomorrow as well, and we'll send an email tomorrow morning. Some of you ask, when's the recording? When's the recording? We'll send it out tomorrow morning. Okay, so look for it tomorrow morning Eastern time, and you'll have the recording. It'll be on our YouTube channel, so you can have it whenever you need to access it. And we hope you'll join us in a few weeks for our tourism and hospitality Q&A. Prior to that, I hope you all have a nice Thanksgiving. It's going to be a weird one this year. I know we're probably separated from family, but I hope you have a nice time and that everybody stays safe the next few weeks and that we see you in December. I appreciate your time, and Mr. Pullen, thank you again. And
yes,
we
enjoyed it.
Will We'll see you in December, everybody. Have a great day.